welcome back to True Detective Season 3, Episode 3 review. This episode is called The Big Never. We open up this episode with the first shot you see of 90s Roland, which is pretty exciting.
Cool. I was waiting for that. I mean, you even speculated last week, like, we don't know if we're going to see him or what his involvement is, but there he was. And, as the episode progresses, you find out a lot about their relationship and kind of what had happened in the 80s and then where they are now in the 90s.
Yeah. So the first part is the 90s with Roland, and he's giving his deposition. Now, in the other episodes, we've only seen 90s Wayne Hayes giving his deposition. So Roland's going over basically what they asked Hayes, like, what did you do as soon as you found the body? Who did you interview? What were the next processes? Now, we saw in the end of the second episode the ransom note or the letter that they got from we don't know who, just saying Julie's fine and not to go find her. So they show some shots of them dusting that note for fingerprints, but as far as we know, nothing's come up from that.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Not yet. It's not really mentioned in this one, right? In this episode?
No. Not that I know of. So Roland mentions he doesn't give the detectives a lot, but he says, my memory's a bit fuzzy. Wayne probably has a better memory, which we know not to be true already. Yeah.
It was the way he said it was kind of snarky, and at first it led me to believe that he had some kind of falling out with Hayes, but you learn later on that he didn't. So I'm trying to figure out why he said it that way. And
it was really weird.
It was.
Yeah, like there was some sort of animosity between, at least with Roland towards Hayes, because you didn't get that from Hayes when he talked about Roland.
No.
He just kind of asked if they had interviewed him yet.
Yeah, Hayes' memory is a huge part of the series, really.
Yeah.
So I feel like you're going to learn something at some point where he forgot something, and it led to maybe him forgetting something led to the wrong man being convicted back in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. We're still waiting to find that out.
Mm-hmm.
And this leads to back into present day when Hayes is being examined by a doctor. He's there with his son.
Yeah, he gets a CT scan, and the doctor, for the most part, says he's okay.
Yeah.
They don't really know why he's having these blackouts, and that's following the end of the second episode where he was looking at the picture of his wife, and then all of a sudden he woke up in the middle of the street at the cross-section between Shoepick and Briarwood.
Yeah.
So his son was concerned, obviously, finding
but
his father.
Hayes is saying convinced, like, I went there for a reason, I just forgot.
Yeah, he can't figure out why he was there. And he gets frustrated at the doctor and basically storms out because he doesn't think he has a problem, but he clearly has.
And the son's clearly, like, maybe trying to put him at home, but he's like, you try putting me in a home and I'll off myself. Get it out of your head. So, like, very adamant. And that's tough, like, you see the relationship between father and son, and son obviously wants to do what's best for his father. He's worried about him, but it's not happening.
This documentary that they're filming with the interviews, bringing up a lot of old stuff, a lot of the stuff from the case that was clearly driving a wedge in their family. We already know that he's estranged from his daughter Rebecca, and now looks like it's driving a wedge between him and his son.
Yeah, you kind of see a little bit at back in the 90s now. When that scene in the Walmart, I don't know if I'm skipping ahead a little bit. I might be.
No, that's the next thing.
Okay.
Yeah,
and first Hayes and Amelia are sitting in the Walgreens like parking lot, kind of planning out what they can do, and Amelia is like going to talk to these detectives who are on this Walgreens case where Julie was arrested, and she's basically he basically told her to go, like, kind of flirt with them.
Yeah, they won't talk to me, but they'll talk to her, basically.
Yeah, and she got a lot of info. But while she's doing that, Hayes is in Walmart with his son and daughter. What's the son's name? I keep forgetting.
Henry. Yeah.
And the daughter?
Is Rebecca. Yeah.
So Henry and Rebecca, and they're in a Walmart, right?
Yeah, Walmart.
And which he clearly doesn't want to be in. But he's
running
Walmart.
Oh,
yeah, no, that's true. But he's obviously Amelia asked him to go get a few things, so we brought the kids there.
Mhm.
And while he's there,
As kids do, Rebecca walks away and just goes to do her own thing. But a normal parent would freak out a little bit, go to the front desk and see if they can call the child over, or even just go to the next aisle, and usually the kid's still there. But because of the case being brought up again, Hayes starts freaking out.
yeah, I might have done the same, even though I'm not a cop. And, I mean, yeah.
That you're you.
That's true. Yeah, so I understand. I mean, you're in this huge store that he didn't want to be in the first place, and now he can't find his daughter, and he's already nervous about the case. So he's freaking out. He's going into full cop mode, telling them to shut down the store and everything, and then she comes running up behind him. And
something so innocent, she just says that she went to go see, what was it, she saw some
was
candy
looking at
aisle,
candy,
and she
yeah.
just decided to walk down that aisle,
Yeah.
and he screams at her.
And curses.
And curses,
It's
yeah.
like, don't you ever fucking do that again.
Yeah, and she starts crying.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Poor
and then
girl.
he realizes what he did, and he brings her into a hug, and he's like, I'm sorry. Okay, so the next scene, you have Hayes and Roland in the car back in the 80s?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It jumped around. This episode jumped around a lot.
Yeah,
Like,
it did
I
jump
was-
around a lot, and it
I was getting
was
lost.
very dialogue heavy.
It
Like,
was.
there wasn't a lot.
It wasn't my favorite episode so far. It was.
But I feel like it was a necessary filler episode.
Yeah.
Like, you
Yeah,
needed
I'm
it.
sure we'll find out more. In
Yeah.
Episode 4.
So it cuts briefly back to 90s, where Roland's giving his deposition, and he says Hayes had an instinct that the Purcell kids were not telling the truth when they told their dad that they were going to play with that Boyle kid, and they didn't have.
Yeah, I guess they didn't believe him.
They didn't believe him. But then it goes back to the 80s, where Wayne and Roland are in the car, and he says the Purcell kids are lying about having a play date with that Boyle
Yeah,
kid.
well, before that, in the 90s, in that scene with Roland, you
Mhm.
this is where you find out that he really still does like Hayes. And, he said he tried to get him to transfer here twice, and it was blocked both times by the mayor's office, right?
Yeah.
The major or the mayor? What did he say?
I heard major.
Yeah.
I don't know what that means.
It might have been that same guy, but
Yeah.
either way, clearly they don't want him there. But West wants to work with Hayes. So going back now to the 80s, they show that scene where they're talking to that Ronnie Boyle kid, right? And he says that
They never had a play date set up. So now we're led to think, and both Hayes and Roland are like, what were these kids up to? Like, why did they tell their dad one thing and end up not going?
Yeah.
And it seems like these kids, well, you find out that from the Boyle kid that they weren't really ever friends. They never had play dates. But the dad, Tom Purcell, said that the boy
they
definitely
went like
had.
2-3 times a week.
Said he was going over to his house 2-3 times a week, and I think Roland asked, did they ever play here? He said, no, they always went over to Boyle's house.
Yeah.
So clearly the kids had some sort of agenda that the parents did not know about.
Yeah.
Well, what
and
kind
then
of
when you
agenda
find
would a 10 and 12-year-old kid
Well, that's
have,
what
you
you
know?
find out. I mean, as you're going through. Well, when he's at their house, he finds those notes when he's looking, where they said like, "Don't listen," and "I'll always keep you safe." Those like little sticky notes.
Well,
whatever they were.
yeah. When they go to the house, the
And
Purcell
then,
has to ask about.
Yeah, and that's when he finds.
They're
the
like,
boy
can we
future.
look around again? And Roland and Hayes go into the girl in the boys' room, and they look further into their stuff, and they find drawings of a map, and they have drawings of a certain place.
Yeah, like a
and
room.
and they also found a bag, like a grocery bag or a tote bag from Hoyt
I
Foods.
thought it was a T-shirt. What?
It was a T-shirt?
I thought so. It could have been a bag. I don't know. Either way, something that says Hoyt Foods, and then Hayes asks the mother about it, and she apparently had worked there, so there is some kind of connection. And eventually he goes and investigates, but before that, we keep jumping around again, and I think you kind of see where do they go from there. It's I think you go back to West now, right? And West in the 90s, and he's talking more about their relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't see each other.
They
but
haven't.
there's no
They
hard
haven't seen.
feelings.
Yeah, he said they haven't seen each other since they stopped working together on this case, and he said there wasn't any falling out. It's just when they stopped working, they just stopped altogether.
Yeah.
So.
And you see that later, but this also is when you see Amelia kind of, working her magic with the cops to get more info about the Walgreens investigation.
Yeah.
And in there you find out that the robbery was a few months ago.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like really recent, so you don't necessarily know where
What
Julie is
yeah.
right now.
She also mentions previously if Hayes thinks that Julie needs help.
Yeah, I didn't catch that.
I know. I've thought about that. I don't have like anything more about that, but she's like, do you think Julie needs help?
Mm-hmm.
Not like maybe she was like forced to steal something. I don't know. But anyway, so Amelia comes home and she went out to dinner with the detective on the case to get more information, and she tells Hayes, and Hayes is clearly mad about it, but also
Yeah. He's still uptight about the whole Walmart thing.
mm-hmm, where he freaks out.
He was like, are you real proud of this or something?
Yeah, he takes
weird.
some shots at her that
Yeah.
are a little unfair, and she says that she's not going to stop doing this case, and she's writing a book on this case at this point in the 90s that hasn't been published yet. But you see that book, you see Hayes holding that book in the 2015 as an older man.
I think just before this fight, you do get a quick trip back to the 80s when he goes into Hoyt Foods and kind of asks for all the employee names. He's talking to that owner. At least that's when I have it. I don't know if you...
I don't remember that.
Yeah, he's in Hoyt Foods and he's talking to, I guess, the manager or one of the higher ups in the company about the whole layout there, and he asks for every single employee's name, and the guy's helpful and he asks where what's the...
Oh, yeah, but Hoyt Foods is an association with that children's outreach program.
Oh, I missed that. You got me on that one. Your notes are more thorough than mine.
Ozark, I wrote a lot. Ozark Children Outreach Program. And they said that Mr. Hoyt is in Africa on a safari.
Yeah.
And Roland tries to get in with the people mentioning that Hayes was a hunter in Vietnam.
Yeah, and then they're kind of sitting, Hayes and West are kind of sitting, like, doing some investigation, and you see them, like, fielding a fake tip, and they're, like, joking, telling them to call the FBI about it. You kind of see a little back and forth, but there's some laughter. You haven't seen Hayes laugh much in there, but...
No, this is the first time you really
once
see him smile.
Yeah.
That he's enjoying Roland's company.
And they also do a little quick scene where West is tracking with Amelia. And this is the first time, like, they're walking in, this first time where he asks her to dinner.
Yeah, so you think we should have some dinner?
Yeah. But then I think it goes from there, that, like, their first date, it goes into that scene in the 90s that we were talking about where they're getting into that fight in the room.
Yeah, so you see kind of how they started, and then later on in their relationship, 10 years later, how it becomes a little rocky and how this case is driving a wedge in between them again.
Back to the 80s, Hayes is tracking, and this is where you find out a few more details, going back to the kids not being honest.
Mm-hmm.
When he's investigating, he's investigating, like, this is when he finds the dice. Like,
they decide to recanvass the site where they found Will's body around that cave, and Hayes goes off on his hunting thing again, and he's tracking, and he finds a duffel bag full of action figures and a Game Boy and some papers, and then he follows a trail. He finds dice from, like, a game board, and then he finds blood and hair on a rock.
So that's when he's like, clearly the boy, I said, that's what he said, but Will had died there, and somebody carried him to the cave where he found them with his hands.
Yeah, so clearly somebody set him up there, because if he died on that rock, somebody moved him to the cave.
And now they find a farmhouse right by this.
Yeah, he follows the trail.
Yeah. So this guy, he says he's already spoken to somebody. You don't know who he spoke to.
Yeah.
The guy doesn't seem to really want to deal with him. He won't let them search the property or anything. But he mentions this brown sedan.
Yeah, and this is the first time it goes back and forth between 2015, the interviewer, and then where Roland finds Hayes finds this farmhouse and talks to the guy. So he mentions that brown sedan, and then they go back to 2015, and the interviewer brings up how there were a number of people that the police forgot or just didn't interview, even though they were mentioned seeing the kids that day.
Yeah, they said they saw the cops going door to door, but were never asked anything. And then somebody said that they had mentioned that brown sedan to the cops, and after that, the cops never came back to question them. So you kind of
she said, and the interviewer says a few people mentioned that brown sedan because it was so weird. It was a very nice car, and it kept driving up and down that road, something that you wouldn't see in their town.
They mentioned that it's a black man and a white woman. That's all you know about them right now.
Yeah.
So back to the 80s, and this is where you see my guy, the trash man, driving in his
Brett
little
Woodard.
go-kart. Yeah, Woodard, and then he's getting attacked.
Yeah, some of these trucks, because the town's freaking out at this point. They know that somebody's out there kidnapping and murdering kids, and so they think it's a trash man. Like we said in our other review, that we think that he's gonna get called out by the town, and so the fathers see him and they kind of run him off the road and they beat the crap out of him.
Yeah, they do. He gets in a few shots though, but
they say stay away from
like 7 or 8 people. Yeah, so
basically we're gonna kill you if we see you around any kids.
Yeah. Back to the 90s now, and this is where you see Tom, the father, in the 90s.
Yeah, it's the first time we see
Tom. And you learn a little bit about what had happened in between this time period. Lucy's dead. The wife.
The wife is dead.
She's been dead for 2 years, and he said Tom has been sober for 5 years.
It seems like they're kind of catching up. Roland and Tom are catching up a little bit.
Yeah.
But it seems like Roland stuck with Tom Purcell throughout these 10 years and has done a lot for him.
He said you've done more for me than anybody, and you. And he said, you pulled me out of that hole 5 years ago.
Yeah.
When you pulled me out of that hole. So I guess, I don't know if we'll go back and see that.
Yeah.
That's the thing with this series, the way they're doing it. Like, it's a lot of foreshadowing to things that we know we might see later, but it already happened. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, it's a lot. Like, it's a show you definitely have to pay attention to every detail or you're going to miss something.
Yeah. But you see he's kind of turned to religion, and he asks Wes to pray with him. And from there now you're going back to 2015. This is a weird scene. This is where Hayes is.
He goes back in his desk. At this point, he hasn't. In 2015, he hasn't revisited. Besides answering the questions that the interview's asking, you don't see him going back over the case. But this time he goes into his study and he brings out his box from the Purcell kids case and he starts going through it. He starts recording himself again. There's a weird shot of a gun on his desk that I don't like where they were going with that.
Yeah.
But as he's going over the case, he starts hearing Amelia's voice. And we think he's just like hearing it, but then the camera pans and you see her behind him. Yeah. Some vision, some ghosts.
That was the first time in this season, at least, of the series, where you see kind of some, I guess, paranormal stuff.
Yeah, we don't really know if it's her ghost or he's just like hearing her. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you see her vividly there.
Yeah, and it's her from the 80s.
Yeah,
it's not like an older version of her.
Yeah, we're 90s.
She starts mentioning things, like speaking in rhyme almost. One thing she said that I thought was interesting, she says that he hardens his heart against things he loves most, and he didn't lose Rebecca in the way that he thought he did. Rebecca is his daughter, who we know they're estranged, and she's in LA now playing music. She also ends saying, did you want to say?
Yeah, well, she, the thing that I wrote down that she said, because like I said, she said a lot of stuff, but at the end she's like, you're worried what they'll find, what you left in the woods. So clearly Hayes had kind of
Something to hide, something he didn't remember.
I don't know if he forgot about it, meant to leave it there, ignored it, but they haven't shown that yet. And it'll be interesting to see. Clearly, the way she said it too is something fine. And then she says, "What?"
She says, "Finish it."
Yeah.
At the end, basically remembering, wrap it up, kind of.
Yeah.
The things he finds in the woods, like the toys, the Game Boy, the action figures, they take pictures of all that stuff and they bring the photos to the Purcell house to ask if these are Julie and Will's toys. And both Lucy and Tom say no, these aren't their kids' toys.
Oh, and this is when I think he finds that album of pictures.
Oh,
And this is weird. Like, you see Will, and it's his communion photo. Looks like a normal communion photo, but it looks exactly like him.
The way he was
the way
positioned.
they found him dead, and he's just like this, and even the face too, like everything.
Yeah, his eyes are closed and everything. And he's praying.
So
That's
that was
really weird.
Yeah. And then also just before that, which we kind of glanced over, this is where you had that flash, the trash man, Woodard.
Yeah, this is a very small scene, but it just flashes back of the trash man in the 80s.
I got you saying trash man.
Woodard, he runs frantically into his shed, and he picks up some sort of large duffel bag that looks like there's a body in there.
Yeah, it looks exactly like a body.
Yeah, and he carries it out of the shed,
yeah.
and that's
you know it's not Julie because she's not dead.
Yeah, we know that Julie's alive. At least in the 90s, we know she's alive.
Could be his kids that he mentioned that he lost them. You don't know how.
Yeah.
Or what.
Yeah, we don't know. We definitely look like a body, but it was just a quick scene where he frantically runs into the shed, picks it up, and carries it out, and then that's it. The scene's over.
Yeah.
One thing we know is we know that Hayes in the 90s is no longer with the police force. So there's a small scene where we see him in his current job, which looks like he's a secretary. He's surrounded by other women typing on a typewriter, and he's the only man in there, what it looks like. And his boss comes and says, "The lieutenant wants to talk to you. It looks like you're moving up in this world."
Yeah.
And then...
so this was a little before, but now you go to the final scene, and Hayes is sitting in a bar, and West walks in. And now this is the first time that you've seen them together in the 90s. So that's pretty cool. And they have some banter back and forth again. And you can tell... Hayes has been drinking a bit already. But yeah, what were you saying?
As soon as he walks in, he calls him Purple Haze.
Yeah, Purple Haze.
Which was like a nickname that they had, or that he gave him.
Yeah, but they're going back and forth, kind of
fall into old repertoire,
Yeah, Wes tells him that he's heading up a task force and he wants him on it.
Yeah.
So they go back and forth, and there's a few lines where you're finding some more things out. The one thing Hayes said that stood out to me was, "If I was clumsy enough to get shot, I'd be golfing most days, calling old friends like I was doing them a favor." Now, was West shot in the 80s when they were doing something? I think you're gonna have a big scene coming up from the 80s.
And then Roland responds saying that if Hayes opened his mouth, he would be somewhere.
Yeah.
We don't know.
Yeah. So he says, if you feel like being a detective again, state's reopening the case. And they go back and forth again, a couple of laughs, and you see every time they're together, Hayes always is like kind of laughing at Wes.
Yeah.
So they have this cool relationship that we'll see where it ends up. We have not seen West in 2015 yet.
No. But we could end up seeing him again. We don't even know if he's alive.
Yeah. I'm anxious now. Finishing up.
But the last shot is them walking out of the bar together. So it looks like Hayes never officially said yes, but it looks like he's gonna join up with him again.
Yeah, I'm interested to see where they go. If they, as they progress, if they wrap up the 80s entirely, and then then they just go back and forth between 2015 and the 90s, or they continue along with this 80s, 90s. And then I'm sure the last few episodes are going to be just 2015, maybe the last one or two. But I'm interested to see how they keep tying in the 80s, 90s, and present day.
Yeah,
it's a little
I feel like we can't go much more into the 80s.
No, 80s
except
is
maybe going back just to see the relationship between Hayes and his wife.
Yeah, well, that or the shootout now. If Wes gets shot, that's probably a big scene.
He mentions that, but there's got to be some sort of wrap up where they arrest somebody and they temporarily close the case until they reopen it in the 90s.
Yeah, so that's when they won't be able to go back to the 80s. I mean, it's going to be wrapped up, which I'm looking forward to because frankly, this jumping back and forth is a little crazy. Either way, I mean, this season is standing on its own. It's been very good, and we're very excited.
Already way better than the second season.
Yes. Poor Vince Vaughn.
Yeah. Poor him.
Poor him. Yeah. Well, I just watched the breakup, and he broke up with Jennifer Aniston, so that was rough. It's been a rough few days.
Oh my god.
Vince Vaughn.
Rough few days. The breakup came out like a decade ago.
I know.
Yeah, I'm sure Vince Vaughn's real rough.
Yeah. All right, so we're looking forward to that going up with episode 4, and we'll see you guys in a few days.
Yeah. Loses.